The Pro Football Focus grades are in for LSU against Southeastern Louisiana. We'll tell you what you need to know. Locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked On LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get great podcasts. Of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. As always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you sincerely for that. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So download the FanDuel app today. After every LSU football game, we come back here on a Monday and we recap what the folks over at Pro Football Focus had to say. This is a caveat that if you're an everydayer, shout out. I apologize that you have to hear this every week, but I'm going to say it again for the people who maybe are finding us for the first time. I look at Pro Football Focus as a metric. It's not the metric. It's not the sole thing to consider. It's just one thing among many things you can consider. I specifically like PFF when we talk about things that happen away from the ball. We're trained when we're watching the game to watch the football. We watch the quarterback, we watch the receivers, the running back, whoever's making the tackle. We're not watching what's happening away from the football. Pro Football Focus does that. They grade it. They give us an idea of what's happening, and that sometimes can put together the piece of the puzzle. It's why I like to do this episode every week. So we'll start with the offense, go to the defense and special teams as we move through. So as we look at the offense for LSU, the top 5 players for LSU on the offensive side of the ball against Southeastern Louisiana, that's where we'll start. Probably no surprise, but Garrett Nussmeier was the highest graded player overall, either side of the ball for LSU. And naturally, let me throw a caveat. Nussmeier had a 92.3, but Jamari Butler had a 93.3. I'll get to that in a minute, but Butler and everybody on the defensive side of the ball saw very limited snaps. Nussmeier played 54 snaps. His overall grade was a 92.3. Absolutely incredible. When you get into the 90s as a grade, it's just not typically what you see. And Nuss, there were a handful of drop passes or incomplete passes, but when you look at the drops, they only charted 2 drops, did Pro Football Focus. I charted 4. My assumption here is when we look at Pro Football Focus, the drops that they charted, I mean, I tell you who they charted drops to. It was 1 from Berrien Brown and 1 from Nick Anderson. They actually happened on consecutive plays on LSU's second drive of the game. Now, I think Aaron Anderson's drop down the right sideline on the second drive was a ball he probably should have had. There was another play by Nick Anderson in the end zone that he probably should have had as well. They were contested. Maybe you don't chart those as drops, but those are plays that could have and maybe should have been made. But all that to say, Garrett Nussmeier was absolutely awesome. And this is 4 weeks, and every 4 weeks he's been at the top of this list for LSU offensively. He was a 91.0 in the passing game. And when you look at the decision making, this is the big thing with Nuss. He made 4 what they credit as big time throws, and PFF has a stat that they call TWPs. They're turnover worthy plays. And Garrett Nussmeier did not have a single turnover-worthy play in that entire football game. That is massive for LSU, for Garrett Nussmeier, whenever you look at how they were able to make it through that game. Because, Nuss, a year ago, his big, obviously, bugaboo was, at times, the errant throws. Now, we also look at this game, and everyone was wondering about depth and stretching the field. He was 2 of 3 for passes that traveled beyond 20 yards in the air. He also attempted 8 passes that went more than 10 yards in the air. So still a game that the majority of the throws were at or near the line of scrimmage. But for Garrett Nussmeier, he was fantastic, and he did not have a single turnover-worthy play, which was awesome. If you look at the overall, like the highest graded players, like the top five either side of the ball, Nuss was the only offensive player overall in the top five. But a couple of other things that I thought were really encouraging. After Nussmeier, the second highest graded player offensively was Donovan Green, and he played 35 snaps. Remember, this is the transfer tight end from Texas A&M, and he is a big old boy. He is 6'4", 250 pounds. He was a top 100 overall prospect in the country when he signed with Texas A&M and Jimbo Fisher. Obviously, whenever Mike Elko took that job, they just didn't know how to use him. So he went in the portal. Brian Kelly knows how to use a tight end. And that's a guy who next year when Bauer Sharp isn't here is going to be your prototype while Trey'Dez Green is your pass catcher. But it was great to see. And they used Donovan Green a lot in the blocking game. He had a 71.1 pass blocking grade as well. So that's a guy that can help you in a lot of different ways. Aaron Anderson, Josh Thompson, and Carius Curne rounded up your top five offensive players. And oh, by the way, Josh Thompson's pass blocking grade was an 87.1, absolutely outstanding. And then Carius Curne played 26 snaps at left tackle, an overall grade of 69.8, a pass blocking grade of 65, a run blocking grade of 69.8. Now, it is worth noting that, and if you're watching the broadcast, you know this, there was a penalty charge to Ori Williams for holding that should have been charged to Carius Curne. So Ori Williams' ranking or rating was way lower because he was saddled with a holding call that should have gone to Curne. So Curne might have been a little bit less. But the point being is that Curne still, in his first extensive action, remember, he had only seen action up until this point of the season, one snap against Louisiana Tech. Curne did not play against Clemson or Florida. He played one snap against Tech. Now he played 26 snaps against Southeastern Louisiana, all at left tackle, and graded out really well. So I don't know that Carius Curne is going to be a guy that makes his biggest impact this year at left tackle when you have Tyree Adams, who has really established himself there, but it might be at right tackle, which we'll talk about here in just a quick second. So if you want to look at the bottom, the other half of the rankings here, and again, take all this with a grain of salt because you had a lot of guys who maybe didn't play a ton of reps. Harlem Berry was the lowest graded player offensively. And I don't know that I necessarily, this is one of those things where I look at Pro Football Focus and I say it's a metric, not the metric. Harlem Berry played 15 snaps in the second half. His pass protection grade was a 70, but he only had one pass protection snap. His rushing grade was a 58. I don't know that I can necessarily agree with that. That's one of those things where PFF is looking at a different set of metrics than you and I. I thought Harlem Berry was really effective running the football and was pretty good offensively. I don't know that I understand why he'd be at the bottom. Weston Davis was the second lowest graded player. Then Ori Williams, Braylon Moore, Kylan Billiot, Paul Mabenga, if we're working from the bottom to the top. Now, the thing about Mabenga, what's interesting, is Mabenga's pass blocking grade was an 83.9. Paul Mabenga has been outstanding pass blocking this year. If I look at his pass blocking grade in the 4 games, he's been above a 75 in every game. Against Clemson, 81, Tech, 80.7, Florida, 75.7, and this week an 83.9 for an overall pass blocking rate of an 85.4. It's the run blocking grade for Paul Mabenga that's got to improve. But his pass blocking grade has been outstanding, and that bears mentioning. It is concerning seeing Braylon Moore there at the bottom. He played 54 snaps. His pass blocking grade was a 61. His run blocking grade was a 52. And you know where I'm going to go with this. I think all of that, 100% of that, is attributed to the fact that he's playing on a bum ankle. And said it all week while everybody was talking about Garrett Nussmeier and his torso, which is fine. Braylon Moore playing with a high ankle sprain is a problem. And when I look at Braylon Moore against Clemson, his pass blocking grade was an 85.8. Played one snap against Tech. Against Florida, his pass blocking grade was a 78.4. And then against Southeastern, a 61.9. He is so integral to everything LSU is going to do. It just doesn't make a lick of sense to me why they decided to play Braylon Moore in this football game. This should have been an opportunity to let him kick his feet up, get that swelling down, take a week off and get ready to go play at Ole Miss, and they got another open date after that. I respect tremendously the guy wanting to get in there and get after it, but my goodness, he is so important to you, and it's evident clearly that he's not 100%. Let's hope he's closer to that this week when you go to Oxford to take on Ole Miss. Now, the other thing that stands out there at the bottom is Weston Davis, who, after Harlan Berry, was your lowest rated offensive lineman. And he was replaced to start the second half. And I want to talk a little bit deeper about that. We'll get to that as we continue here. It's Locked On LSU, your team every day. Quick question for you college football fans. If you could go back in time and sit in the front row at your school's biggest rivalry game, what hat would you be wearing? Yes, I said hat. For me, it would be, and it was, the game. See, these aren't just hats. It's the same vintage styles that fans wore back in the 80s and the 90s. Guess what? They still go for the same price they did back then when you use the code Locked On. It'll get you your vintage hat for just $16.99. So head to thegamecaps.com. That's thegamecaps.com and grab your team's classic bar or retro circle design. Use the code Locked On, one word, for an exclusive discount, because legends wear the game. So I know a lot of the conversation has been about this offensive line, and justifiably. I want to point something out that is worth mentioning here, and we get to the defense here in just a quick second. On August the 18th, keep in mind, LSU played Clemson on August the 30th. So 12 days before LSU played their opener against Clemson, LSU made a switch on the first-team offensive line. Up until that point, we had seen a consistent first-team offensive line. It was Tyree Adams at left tackle. It was DJ Chester and Paul Mabenga battling it out at left guard, and Cohen Eccles as well. But Braylon Moore was your center, Josh Thompson was your right guard, and Weston Davis was your right tackle. And then 12 days before that game, 12 days before LSU played Clemson, we saw Carius Curne running with the first team at right tackle. And keep in mind, it's not like he had been running second team and so they put him in there. He was left tackle. Carius Curne was running left tackle all of fall camp. Second team left tackle all of fall camp. And then 12 days before the opener, not only did they move him to right tackle, but they had him running with the first team. 12 days before, first team, 12 days before you played Clemson. That was August the 18th. The next day, we had media availability with Brian Kelly on August the 19th, and I asked him about that shuffle and moving Carius Curne to right tackle. Listen to what Brian Kelly said. Again, this would have been 11 days before the Clemson opener. 11 days before they played Clemson.
You know, Tyree is going to be our starting left tackle. I think there's still a battle between Paul and Cohen Eccles, you know, for one of the guard positions. Justin has nailed down one of the guard positions. Braylon has nailed down the center, excuse me, the center position. And I think there's still a battle for that next tackle position, which would be the right tackle. So we moved Carius over there to compete with Weston to see who's our best. And maybe it's both of them, Matt, more than anything else. We wanted to see that maybe it's a combination or maybe it's one or the other. There wasn't enough competition there. We feel like Ori's coming along, but he wasn't there yet. So we wanted to create a little bit more competition at that right tackle position. Does that make sense?
11 days before LSU played Clemson, they had a different starting right tackle, and it was a guy who had never played there. 11 days before the opener against Clemson, the most anticipated opener in more than a decade, probably since 2011, a decade and a half, they were making a change at right tackle to push Weston Davis. They saw then the potential issues they had with Weston Davis. Now, Weston Davis is a former five-star. He is 6'7", he is 317 pounds, and he is super athletic. But in the opportunities that he has gotten so far, he has really struggled. If I look at his Pro Football Focus grades for 4 games, against Clemson, his overall grade was a 48. Against Louisiana Tech, his overall grade was a 50.3. Against Florida, it was an abysmal 34.8. And against Southeastern, not much better, at a 53. He's also committed 5 penalties, 3 of them against Florida, 1 against Clemson, 1 against Southeastern. To start the second half of the game against Southeastern on Saturday, the offense ran out there and the first team ran 1 series of the second half. DJ Chester played right tackle with the first team to start the second half. Now, you're not going to have DJ Chester for the first half against Ole Miss on the road because of the stupid targeting penalty. But this could be a week where maybe you see Carius Curne, who played left tackle and was one of your top 5 overall graded players, move to right tackle and maybe get a start. I don't know that I love the idea of giving a true freshman his first career start on the road against the number 13 ranked team in America and saying, go get him, kid. But Weston Davis doesn't have a tremendous amount of experience over Curne at this point. He's a second-year player, and he started 4 games, and he started at Clemson. So it's not a giant difference, but it's very clear. And Brian Kelly was telling us 11 days before the Clemson game, they had concerns about Davis. And through 4 games, that's manifest. Now, I think Weston Davis has tremendous potential. He's 6'7", 317. He was a 5-star. He's got all the ability in the world. He's just got to get better. And players can get better. And they can improve throughout the course of the season. That is allowed. You can improve as the season goes along. And I think that will happen for Weston Davis, just like it did last year for Paul Mabenga. He was awful when he first came in. I don't mean to be rude, but he came in halfway through the game against A&M. His first start was against Bama. It was atrocious. Then it was atrocious against Florida. But then he got better against Vanderbilt and Oklahoma. And in the bowl game, every week he got a little better. And this year he's been outstanding against the pass. Got to get better on the run, but guys get better. So that's worth mentioning as they continue to move through this week. Let's see ultimately what they decide to do at right tackle, and if maybe we don't see the possibility with no DJ Chester in the first half of maybe, just maybe, seeing Carius Curne get a look at right tackle if Weston Davis struggles this week in practice. We'll certainly ask Brian Kelly about that when he meets with reporters on Monday for his weekly press conference, but that's one certainly worth watching as they move along. Okay, I want to talk about defense and special teams. We'll do it as we continue to wrap up Locked on LSU. It's your team every day. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. So, are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. And we're also brought to you by our friends over at Square. This episode is brought to you by Square, your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. There's certain businesses that truly make the neighborhood feel like home, whether it's the local sports bar packed on game days, the coffee shop that knows your order by heart, or the corner deli that's been serving your community for decades. These are the places that bring people together. When the neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. So it's the kind of place you walk in, everyone knows your name, the staff are like family. They've been serving the community for years. And Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/lockedoncollege to learn more. Again, that's square.com/go/lockedoncollege. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square. See you in the neighborhood. Okay, let's look at the defensive side of the ball and what all shaped out there against Southeastern Louisiana on the defensive grades. At the top of the page was Jamari Butler. Now, the interesting thing about the defensive grades is the most snaps anybody played in this game were Devon Keys, who played 25, and Javin Toviano, who played 25. When you look at your starters, Whit Weeks played 17 snaps. Devon Keys started, played 25 snaps. Bernard Gooden, 15. Jacobin Guillory, 14. I'm just looking at the starters. Forgive me, Harold Perkins played 25 as well. Mansour Delane, 14. DeMarcus Cooley, 21. Patrick Payton, 15. Jack Pyburn, 15. AJ Halsey, 21. And PJ Woodland, 21. The point is, this was a game where the defense was barely on the field in the first half. They allowed 30 yards of offense in the first half. And then in the second half, the defense had the complete second half off. Barely none of the starters really gave it any go in the second half. So a great outing defensively for a lot of these guys. Now, the other thing I'll tell you that's important, Gabe Relaford with the dislocated shoulder, we'll see what his status is for this week against Ole Miss. But Jamari Butler could see his role increase this week at Ole Miss, given Gabe Relaford's injury. And with Lane Kiffin and the tempo that he likes to run, it is so important that you maintain fresh bodies so you don't get worn down. That's what happened to LSU 2 years ago in 23 when they went to Oxford. They played that ridiculous game where nobody could stop anybody. That changes on Saturday. You have a much better, obviously, a dramatically better LSU defense, one of the best defenses in the country, and I think a lesser Ole Miss offense. So it's not going to be quite as high-powered as was 2 years ago, but Ole Miss is still going to want to run tempo, and it's still an opportunity where you want to be able to rotate guys freely. So I also think it's a tremendous benefit that you were able to rest West Weeks in this ball game, and a guy like Whit Weeks, for example, was your second highest graded on PFF, and he only played 17 snaps. I mean, Whit Weeks now effectively he's gotten 2 weeks off. I mean, he played 54 against Clemson, 42 against Tech, and then just 3 snaps against Florida before he's ejected for targeting, and 17 against Southeastern. So in the last 2 weeks, he's played a total of 20 snaps. So Whit Weeks should be as fresh and healthy as he would be ever. So go all in this game against Ole Miss, and then you come back against, then you have an open date before you play South Carolina. So your top 5 were Butler, Whit Weeks, Relaford, who had an outstanding game, and then Devon Keys 4th, and Bernard Gooden was 5th. Bernard Gooden continues to find himself atop this list, which is awesome. He only played 15 snaps, but he's the one who made the stuff on the 4th down quarterback sneak. So he had a 74 grade against the run, and was a big part of what LSU was able to do defensively there on the interior and limiting what Southeastern did. Devon Keys was a 79 against the run and did not miss a tackle. He had 2 hurries. He batted down a ball at the line of scrimmage. So really great to see Devon Keys have the day that he did as well, in place of West Weeks, who was injured and did not play in this ball game. He effectively is acting like a starter, and you feel great about that because you've got Whit Weeks, West Weeks, Devon Keys. Any of those 3 feel interchangeable, and of course Harold Perkins as well within your linebacker room. If you go to the bottom, Zach Weeks was your lowest graded. Dominic McKinley was next, but a big part of that was the fact that Dominic McKinley got a flag for throwing a helmet for 15 yards. That's going to Pro Football Focus dings you for that. That's why he's down at the bottom. Sean Washington, Wallace Foster, Aiden Anding, they're all at the bottom. I just don't read much into it. When I look at the graph, like the full chart of every defensive player, it's interesting. There were 42 players that took a defensive snap. For context, 22 players got a defensive snap against Florida. So you played 20 more players in this game than you did a week ago. So it's just going to alter the ratings. But one of the things you look at, I told you, like Pro Football Focus, it's color coded. So if you're like dark blue, that's in the 90s toward 100, then like dark green, then light, medium green, then light green, then like it continues to go to yellow, then like orange, then red as you can continue to decline. So when you look at the whole graph, you try to look at, okay, what stands out? So I look at the reds. Well, I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 reds. So 42 players, all 42 got 5 different grades. You're talking about more than 100 different color-coded portions on this chart, and there's 5 reds. Well, one was Michael Turner's tackling grade. One was Jack Pyburn's tackling grade. One was Jakeem Jackson's tackling grade. And then one was PJ Woodland's tackling grade. And then 2 were Zach Weeks. His overall grade was a 27, and his coverage grade was a 28, for whatever that's worth. He had one play in coverage. He was targeted one time and allowed a reception. It's just hard to make much of that. One other thing I'll talk about when I look at special teams, just very quickly, this is consistent, and I love this, by the way. I love the fact that when I look at the special teams grades for LSU, you see a lot of the same names at the top, and you see some key names for this LSU football team that are making an impact. Guys like Javen Toviano and Chris Hilton. Those are guys that are Devon Keys that are getting the opportunity to play special teams in addition to their position. And because LSU has great depth, you continue to see it there as well. So Tigers get a massive win. The Pro Football Focus grades largely reflect what we all saw on Saturday night. Now they'll pack up and they'll head to Oxford. All right, it's another big moment on Locked On College Football fans. Locked On and Fire TV present College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation, a longtime two-time AP Coach of the Year Gary Patterson, former college star Jesse Holley, and Locked On's local experts. A college football preview only Locked On can do, so catch College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season only on Fire TV. If you're on podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. If you're on YouTube, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video, and let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We got you here every single day for Locked On LSU, your team every day.